The next speaker, a distinguished journalist who is going to share with us the scholars, so to say. But we think that journalism is also scholarship in many ways. So as a great communicator, I'm inviting Mr. Chukla, a senior journalist and researcher, to speak about intellectual discourse since the Vedic time to the contemporary.
Respected chairperson, my topic is on Shastrarth in contemporary world. Before I proceed, I would like to thank Professor Sri Kant Singh of Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication, where I completed this project as fellow, in which Professor Singh was director and Professor Sachidanand Misra, Department of Philosophy, Banaras Hindu University, was co-director of this project. The first mention of Shastrarth, the very idea of procedure of Shastrarth is first described in Rigveda in 10th mandal of 71st Sukta of 10th mandal of Rigveda. That is the first composition of human on this planet. This detailed idea of Shastrarth. And all these mantra in these, there are 12 mantra in this sukta, and they one by one they give various aspects of Shastrarth. The word Shastrarth is also used in Rigveda in the sense of discipline, or we can say discipline of knowledge. And also the word artha is also used there in a different sukta, that is however, the concept of Shastrarth is there, but the word Shastrarth, the term Shastrarth, is not used in Rigveda in that sense. They have used the word Vacham or Vag Marga that has been used. In other Vedic texts, the words Vako Vakya, Brahmoday, and later on Katha, Anvakshiki, Hetu Vidya, Hetu Shastra, Tantra Yukti, these terms have been used for intellectual discourse in different books of the Vedic knowledge system. The term Shastrarth comes later, and it is used in Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, Shvetashwar Upanishad, Kamandaki Niti Shastra, Vakyapadiya, and other texts. So this is about historical perspective. About conceptual framework, the first mantra of 71st Sukta describes a procedure in with an analogy of how we segregate grain from soil and other impurities. And they say, as we we separate grain from impurities for our consumption. In the same way, intellectuals segregate knowledge from information and other impurities and finally convert it in the form of consumable knowledge to be disseminated in the society. Besides, in later mantras, it has been used in the form of Vajineshu, that is knowledge competition, then evaluation, which we know as peer review process today, and also in learning through competitive augmentation, and in communication as well. Here we find almost all the modes of communication, that is personal communication, group communication, even intrapersonal communication, and up to some extent mass communication also. Later texts have further described this process and standardized the Shastrarth by using terminologies, defining them, and presenting technical framework for the entire process of Shastrarth. In 6th century, we see a competition among scholars of Onvixiki school, that is, we can say school of logic, medical school, and other schools also to develop a robust, transdisciplinary, and universally acceptable methodology for intellectual discourse. However, Medatithi Gautam, who survived before pre-Buddhist days in about 550 BCE, he is credited to present the first, most robust methodology of intellectual discourse in his book Nyaya Sutra. Though there is a dispute among scholars that whether he authored the entire book or only the first two chapters, but even if we consider that he authored the first adhyay or and its two ahniks, it makes it clear that he is the founder of this uh, methodology of Shastrarth. He has used the word katha and has described three models, Vad, Jalp, and Vitanda, for intellectual discourse. Before I go into detail into the methodology, I would give some glimpses on the scope of Shastrarth. Shastrarth has been used across the disciplines. In the pre-British period in India, it was being used in mathematics, medical science, that is Ayurveda, Vyakaran, Jyotish, roughly could be translated as space science, communication, metallurgy, and any kind of known discipline, and in different languages also. Besides various philosophical schools such as Vaiseshik, Sankhya, Buddhist, Jain, Vedant, they developed their own methods on the basis of the methodology developed by Gautam, with slight differences which suited to their philosophical schools. Kautilya, that is popularly known as Chanakya, in Arthashastra, he has described a different kind of methodology for social sciences, where he has enlisted 32 Tantra Yuktis. Medical school, that is Ayurveda, they have their own methodology of Shastrartha, that is Charak Samhita mentions 36 Tantra Yukti and Susut Samhita. Then we have Vyakaran, Panini, literature also, Natya Shastra, all these schools, they have slightly different methodologies, but all these methodologies are based on the principles set in the Rigveda and later on the technological framework developed by Gautam in Nyaya Sutra. There is a misconception that Shastrarth is conducted or was conducted generally on religious issues and only in Sanskrit language. But as I told, that it was conducted and the methodology is present in almost all the known disciplines of knowledge, which were taught in Indian academic institutions before the British set up their universities and imported modern methodologies from European countries. Besides in Sanskrit, there is one concept in Shastrarth, that is Nigrasthan. The 14th Nigrasthan, which is known as Ananubhashan, is provides the scope for translation of the proposition made by the proponent. It says that if the opponent is not able to understand the meaning of the sentence presented by the proponent, then the jury or any member of the jury should translate it in the language of the opponent or simplify it and explain it to the opponent so that he could reply the question raised by his rival. Now coming on methodology, in his methodology, Gautam has presented uh, 16 categories of Shastra, of Katha, and uh, 16 categories, and we can divide those categories into four uh, groups. The first one is composition of sound or robust argument, that is yukti vakya, how to compose, how to present a sentence which is infallible and robust in such a way that it could not be deconstructed. Secondly, how to identifying faults, demerits in opponents or rivals argument. It includes Hetwabhas, Chal, Jati, and Nigrasthan. And then three approaches of Shastrarth. He has used the term Katha, that is Vad, Jal, and Vitanda. In Vad, it is very friendly and generally between the scholars of the same stature or between teach, teacher, or we can say perceptor, guru, and shishya, student. Jalpa is conducted as a part of competition among students, among scholars, or scholars of different schools or two different schools. Then Vitanda, it is known as deconstruction only when one scholar uses a highly critical approach without presenting his own thoughts or vision on certain issues, deconstructs the thought of the proponent only. And finally, Nirday, that is ascertainment, is very important in Shastra because after every intellectual discourse, there should be ascertainment, that is real nature of the subject matter. They use the term padarth. So we can say real nature of padarth. But padarth is not matter there. So subject matter under study, we ascertainment of that. Whatever we are speaking about, there should be ascertainment at the end of the discussion. If we put it in the form of a definition, various scholars have defined Shastrarth from their perspective. But one thing is something are very important there. The first thing is it should be in friendly manner. It has been described in Rigveda also, that is Sakhaya, Sakhyam. These words has been used in Rigveda. There is high emphasis that the scholars engaging in intellectual discourse should have friendly involvement and should look each other in a friendly way, not an opponent in that manner. Secondly, it should be with sports spirit. So, and one thing more important, that the real nature of both the scholars through debate do not aim to deconstruct one another, but aim to reach achieve, know the real nature of the subject matter under discussion. So I have put these things in the form of a definition. As a process, Shastrarth is ascertainment of the real meaning of a message, verbal or non-verbal, through scientific way of competitive argumentation in a friendly manner with the sports spirit. It is crucial for realization, protection, conservation, cleansing, enhancement, and dissemination of the knowledge, and also in conducting learning assessment. Though I agree with previous scholars that several Sanskrit terms are non-translatable in English, but I have tried my best to put the nearest parallel terms of English, but where required, I am trying to explain it in Sanskrit also. Now I will try to present a comparative analysis of Shastrarth and with the modern mode of intellectual discourse. Uh, the first thing I noticed that almost all the methodologies in social sciences, they have been borrowed from natural sciences, and here makes the big difference. In natural sciences, if it is sodium chloride, it will remain sodium chloride even if you abuse, insult, or do anything to it. But humans change when they are informed, when they gain knowledge. When you say that when you communicate to a section of population about freedom, certain kind of rights, their behavior will change. So the scholars studying that community, they need to change. So this is the, I think, a drawback in the methodologies that have been borrowed from natural sciences and imposed or being implemented in social sciences. Here, Shastrarth provides an opportunity to both Paksha and Pratipaksha, equal opportunity to compete in a robust technical framework. That technical framework I already described, provided by Megatithi Gautam and later on developed by different scholars. In this way, Shastrarth, in modern methodology, you frame questions and then you do survey, then you analyze and draw conclusion. So in natural sciences, the subject matter do not have the opportunity to raise question to you, but humans do have. So Shastras provides an opportunity to the subject matter to raise question to the researcher. Okay. Here, the beholder of the one view is put against the beholder of the other view. So you frame your question, the Pratipaksha counter view will have its own question, and there will be questioning between the both. And the idea, vision, innovation, thought, or whatever you can say, have an opportunity to survive on the pattern of survival of the fittest. And the survival of the fittest is not only a macro concept. If you can survive at one corner of the earth, survive there. If you have potential to spread, you means the vision. If your vision has potential to spread throughout the world, it can. Thank you. I will take 2 minutes. So in any form, you have all the uh, equal opportunity. Then Shastra provides level playing field in various visions, in interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary also. And their most important thing is there is no scope for interference by the state or political power. In these thousands of his years of history of Shastrarth, no power could ever intervene or influence the discourse between two intellectuals of different schools. They decide their terms and conditions, and they decide what will happen if other side wins. Unlike the modern quantitative and qualitative research methods, where researcher, I can come to this, the present scenario, though the Shastrarth is known from Vedic age, you might be aware about Gargi and Yagyaval Shastrarth, then Mandan Mishra, Nagasena, Shankar, Dayanand. There are several scholars who practice Shastrarth, but today the situation is that Shastrarth has been driven out, is not being used in academic institutions in India. Only a few Sanskrit universities use Shastrarth as intellectual discourse, that too in very customary manner. And as I explained, Shastra has a potential to be developed into a qualitative methodology for not only for social sciences but also from natural sciences. And another thing that it can bridge gap between science, social science, and technologies, and can provide a fertile ground for developing holistic and integrated perspective vision on various issues. And also, and due to Shastra, due to this tradition of intellectual discourse, we have so many cultures, so many languages, and so many schools of thought surviving in India since thousands of years. And due to this spirit of Shastra, not only the religions and philosophies who developed on Indian ground, but also those which were imported from Arab and other continents, they too have different sects in India, such as Islam, which emphasizes uh, on single God. They too have about 72 sects in India, with some of whom have their branches in other countries also. So these things are due to unfettered, open-ended questioning process, which is described in Rigveda also. I would like to uh, sing these two lines of Rigveda, which says, that dangerous are those people who do not believe in questioning and who do not believe in dialogue. Samvada, O God, save us then from one. It says, न न यः सम्पृच्छे न पुनर्हवीतवे न संवादाय रमते तस्मान्नो अद्य संमृतेरुरुष्यतं बाहुभ्यां न उरुष्यतम्. Om Shanti. Thank you very much.
Anyavad, thank you very much for your scholarly analysis, which is very useful to us. If you switch off the presentation now, we will have the opportunity to start the closing discussion. And in the closing discussion, I would like to link what you have said on a philosophical and methodological issues with what Professor Mishra wanted to end his presentation with.